write down everything I say.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And then talk for 3 hours.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll get going because we'll be back leave 4. So, welcome to number 2 of systemic functional grammar session on appraisal. Who was here before? First, number 1? No. Right, I think that's
That doesn't bode well.
old mob who are going to be a bit late. Right. Okay, so I was going to recap anyway because I thought we'd have a mix of people who've done the first one and some who hadn't. So, what I'll do is I'll go through this first. And thanks, Sally. Cool, thank you. And then we'll get into the second piece. So once we get the framework, then we'll start analysing what students actually write. What we did last time is we went through this and then we got through number 1, number 2 and I think number 3. I think we got up to 1 minus, and so we'll push on from the 1 to 1 plus to 2 stage and see what we get. So I'm running these. One reason I'm running them is I went to Sydney earlier this year and went to this 2-day session on this, and so it's part of my time is exactly giving back and passing on the details. Yeah. So let's start with this. What is appraisal? First of all, appraisal is how you show attitude. And so that's position, likes, dislikes, how you show your relationship of your attitude to other people's attitude, to the reader, the community of readers that you imagine, and you construct an in-group and an out-group, just kind of inferentially in the text, various things like this. So it's probably best to look at the detail by working our way through it. Basically, let's start with attitude. So with attitude. So what we're looking at and going to try to develop in students through analysis of this, we can figure out what language resources are there that they've already got, what resources are they kind of missing. It might be a category that they use a lot, like for example, first one, emotion. So, I love, I hate, I like, I don't like, the simplest one of all. So early on we found students, as predictably, would use quite a lot of that. Okay, but the next ones we've got here are, I'll put the next one, actually, the order's a little bit different from this, just because I'm used to working with this order. So, appreciation. So, appreciation is like aesthetics. So, let's have a look over the page here. I'm skimming through this because I want it to just be a recap. Actually, they've got the order around the other way, haven't they? Different from what I'm doing. But, okay, one thing that will show you, see the very back page? There's a more detailed list. I'll be jumping around through the categories quite a lot, okay? So if you look at that last page, 3, appreciation. Well, look, actually, I'm jumping around too much, sorry. Emotion, have a look at affect. Someone's called that. Affect. And the example is, many students are outraged. I'm discomforted. So those I like, I dislike, you might get lower levels, but at the higher levels, you might get something like that. But it's still a direct expression of emotion. Okay, so if we jump to appreciation. So as it says, assessments of, this is assessments, apologise for jumping around, I'm going to actually start here. There's a reason, and that is, we'll understand that better if we look at this. Alright, sorry about this. Judgment. If we look at judgment, it's judgment of behaviour. That's the key. Human. And they break it down into a number of categories. You can see the categories there. What they call social sanction and social esteem. So social sanction is legality or illegality, morality or immorality. Let's look at some of the words as examples. It's often through the example that you get the best idea. Immoral, just jumping around. Sinful, innocent, law-abiding, murderous, cruel, caring, deceptive, fraudulent, honest. You know, they're obviously normative judgments of behaviour. So you can see how it's different from emotion, isn't it? Clearly we have an emotional reaction to those things, but the way it's expressed is in that form. So that's social sanction. As one presenter said, social sanction is different from social esteem. Let's have a look at social esteem. Still evaluating people, but not morality or legality. And it breaks down into normality. So somebody's eccentric or conventional or traditional. Competence or capacity. Skilled, knowledgeable, stupid, dunce, feeble. And psychological disposition. So emotions here, but not direct emotional expression like the first category, affect. Brave, determined, zealous, lazy. So you can see there's judgments implicit in those terms, but they fall into those categories. So social esteem, social sanction. Now, you know, it took me a while, just those 2 days, you know, it takes a while to get just used to working in these categories, sorting them out and deciding. And then, you know, there are grey areas and there are contestable words like, is that word more social sanction or is it more social esteem? One thing that helps, as one person said, if you get in trouble and need a lawyer or a priest, then that's social sanction, because it's about legality or morality. Yeah. Other things are probably going to fall into social esteem. Okay, so we can show judgment by using these sorts of terms. Appreciation, the reason I jumped here is because appreciation is about the non-human behaviour. Okay, so if we now go to number 3, assessments of objects, artefacts, processes, circumstances and states of affair rather than of human behaviour or character. Okay. However, human participants may be appreciated, but like aesthetically, like he's a really handsome young man. That's an aesthetic judgment. It's a person, it's a human, but it's an aesthetic judgment, isn't it? It's not a moral judgment or legal judgment or judgment of social capability. So, as I said, it's traditionally known as aesthetics, positive and negative assessments of the form, appearance, construction, presentation or impact of objects and entities. There's a review of the E-Type Jag, masterpiece, dramatic, gorgeous, glamour. Notice it can be adjectives, dramatic, but it can also be nouns, glamour, romance. So we're not looking so much at this is a form of grammar, but it's obviously a different universe of grammar, and the two are useful to combine and say, okay, look, here's appreciation, and it's being expressed through the adjectival form, but we can do it by nominalising it and packaging it as a noun and say glamour. And that's a pretty important technique, the whole nominalisation thing, that people who are into this stress quite a lot. The nominalisation of most of those adjectives. You can package it as a noun that has certain effects. Okay, so you've got those methods of showing attitude. Now then, if we go back to the beginning, we've got attitude, and then our next category, the next broad category, we've got to put it up here, graduation. Once you express an emotion, or you appreciate, sorry, I better write there non-human participants. once you've made an emotional statement or appreciation or judgment, then you can modify it, intensify it, or lower it with graduation. So you have two forms of graduation. You have force and focus. So if you look at force, this is the intensity of something. So you can do it various ways. That angel, that rascal, implicit in the word is a certain level of intensity. Heavenly, rotten, shot or plunged. Just by choosing words that are more intense than, say, dropped or rose, you're adding a force to the expression. You can do it through repetition. You tried and tried, or they were terrible, just awful. Two different words, but still a repetition. Jumping a little bit further down, the really simple one to understand is a little, very, very intensifying. Always, sometimes. So there, you're intensifying. That's what they call usuality. Sometimes, always, never. That's a form of force as well. He probably clearly went home. Yeah, so modal adjuncts. I'd put that under entertainment, but anyway, they're putting it there. We'll get to entertainment in a minute. So that's force. So raising and lowering of force, is about intensity. Now, if we flip over, you get focus. So let's think of that as intensity of something. Focus is does it belong to a particular category? And if it really, really belongs, that's strong focus. For example, James is a true friend. Out of the category of friend, he's right in the centre. So very, very focused. If he's kind of a friend, it's out on the edge, isn't it? But can you see how it's different? It's not a quantitative thing. It's more like, has he got this quality? How far towards the centre of that scale of set, if you like, that set is he? All right, I'm going to go quickly because it is a recap. We have covered this before. Okay, so that's graduation. So maybe I'll underline it with a different colour because there are categories and there's sort of broader categories. So we've covered attitude, and under attitude we've got those three ways of expressing attitude. Then we've got graduation. How much of something? So, what category there? Next one, engagement. An engagement is just kind of what it says. It's like how involved is the writer, how much do they identify with a position, and how much they distance themselves from something. So we have three categories, and again I'm going to change the order a bit because I think it's more logical to think of proclaim, then disclaim. So positive, isn't it? Proclaiming, disclaiming, and then we've got entertain, and attribution. So proclaim is where, let's have a look at last page there. Second. Sorry, page 1, 2, 3, 4. Proclamation. I'm compelled to conclude. So if you have a look at the top, it says where the speaker writer subscribes to a particular position and in some cases rules out competing alternative ones. So it's a way of kind of blocking out other positions and aligning yourself closely. So that's why it's called engagement. It's about how distant you are from that statement. Are you aligning yourself with it or are you distancing yourself? So all these expressions are kind of about close, suggesting close alignment with what's being said. I'm compelled to conclude that, clearly, that structure aligns the writer with that idea. I argue, I believe, X has shown, X has demonstrated. Okay. No one, of course, so that phrase, of course, aligns the writer more strongly with the position. Personally, to my mind, etc., etc. Okay, so that's proclamation. Jumping to disclaim. It's about distancing. It is alleged. It is alleged suggests, well, somebody's claiming it, but you don't necessarily identify with it, right? There's a distancing there. So I'm going backwards here to the earlier page. I deny, I concede, in other words, it was something that was distant. I'm now accepting some of it. Can't be true. What is a free gift? Aren't all gift free? Rhetorical question. Distancing yourself from the idea. So that's disclaiming. You can see this is about proximity, isn't it? To an idea, either distant or close. Okay, entertain is when you're allowing a number of possibilities. It's like, you know, the collocation in English, oh, I entertain, why don't you entertain that possibility? So that's kind of entertaining. Not Bugs Bunny or Disneyland, right? It's entertaining the possibilities. So if we have a look at examples, clearest one would be things like may, probably, likely. So all the hedging that we do in a lot of academic discourse would fit in here. Use of modals. And certain reporting verbs. The report suggests that. Rebecca had that nice thing I saw today that you gave Alison, reporting verbs from the Uni of Adelaide. And I was looking at that and thinking, yeah, you could actually go through that list and think of some terms do, some of those phrases do that. You know, something proves, the research proves. Claims is an interesting one because claims sits there. Somebody claims, but it's more distanced. Suggests would fit in here. So that list, they didn't categorise that list using this framework, but it would be an interesting exercise for us to sit down and go through that and try to sort out which ones distance, say, reporting research, and which ones suggest agreement and so on. And, you know, getting students sensitive to that. That's obviously, you know, something you do at diploma level. Certainly, probably EAP could explore that kind of stuff. But yeah, often when you get that stuff, it's not looked at in this framework. So that's where this framework can give us new insights and suggest things that perhaps we should be teaching that we're currently not. Which I want to move to once we get through this stuff. Okay, it seems that, it's possible that, you can see, I think, entertainment there. Attribution's fairly simple. It's when you're reporting what other people say or write or claim. She alleged that. It's also disclaimed as well, isn't it? There's a distancing in the term alleged. So in a case like that, you can have two things operating at once. There's disclaim and attribution. There's no reason, lots of these things can overlap. They're not mutually exclusive. They convincingly showed, yeah, so if you show something, that suggests you, as it says, endorse it as well. Because you believe it to be true, if it's shown. So that's having the effect of attribution, but also proclamation. You're kind of underlining that you agree with that. According to Rowan, comedians should have moles. According to, so any according to is attribution. Okay, so we went through that last time. Yep.
Just a question there. Attribution, like according to Rowan, comedians should have moles, and yet if we were to say Rowan claims, that the meeting should have mould, you would suggest that the claiming, that word claim, is under, is where? Is under,
Disclaim,
is under disclaim, and yet,
but also attribution. It would be doing two jobs at once, I'd say.
okay, yeah, because I was thinking it's very close.
Yeah, I'd say that's doing two things. It's saying
right.
that person
Yeah.
said this, but also the word claim is also doing that disclaiming work as well.
Right.
Because if you say somebody claims that there's a but hanging in there somewhere, isn't there? Usually, you're going to. If you say claims, it's not necessarily true.
No.
But if you say shows,
Right.
there is. Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
So that one's more distant than the other. So there's a disclaim element in the
I see. Okay.
in the word claim.
That's quite subtle.
A
isn't
disclaim
it?
in the word claim. That's scary. Right. All right. So I've raced through that. If you want to work your way through in more detail, we'll probably end up referring back to that as we work through the examples. As I said, with these things, what I wanted to do was to work our way up through actual text. So these came from, as you can see at the top, ISLPR writing examples. I don't know when and how, who gave these to us. They were circulating. And it's kind of handy because we have worked our way through just looking at the first one, the second, the third. I've got a notated copy of that if you would like to look at those later, but I'm going to keep on rolling because for the third to a half we've covered those already. We did number one, so 0 plus to 1 minus. We did the 1 minus, I think. I like country Australia. And I'm going to jump now to 1. Guys who were here last time, I don't think we covered number 1. Did we? My town is radio? No. Okay, so with that extremely quick introduction, we're now going to use these tools to analyse this. Now the point of analysing it is to see ultimately, out of all of those are all resources that writers use, and obviously some at lower levels, like some of these, well, you might report, my mother said, sure, those simple forms. You may not get into too much of some of those. I think you'd be surprised at lower levels what can emerge here, depending on the context and the situation. Even ordinary things that you report, it doesn't have to be research. But yeah, what we're trying to find is, by looking at students' work, what they're strong at, but there might be a gap. They might use heaps of this and heaps of this, but they're just not using this very much. Now, it might be the nature of the task that they're writing about. They just don't need to talk about this. But and this is obviously what you've got to reflect on, like, what's the purpose of what they're writing, and what would we expect, out of a more developed writer, and then where are the gaps? Are they using a lot of this, but not so much of this? Are they really good at this, but they probably should in this task be doing some of this, but there's just nothing there. So the point of this different kind of grammar framework is that your classical grammar obviously isn't going to tell you any of this kind of thing, is it? It's just, there aren't the mechanisms. So let's see what we get. We look at 1 plus.
Oh, 1 or 1?
Oh, sorry, 1. 1. Let's just look at, I'll just work through the first, say, 3 or 4 lines, and then I'll hand it over to you to see what you get, and have 5-10 minutes on it. My town is Radio. It is a very beautiful town in Italy. The town is on Radio Lake. Radio Lake has a very clean water and a fish. We are going to the beach and swimming in this. Radio has a very shops and restaurants and hotels. In the summer comes a very much visitors who have a very good holiday. Yeah. Okay, now we'll forget the classical grammar. Well, we might need it. We'll just keep it in the background and work with this new framework. Anything in the first sentence? Is there?
Very.
Yeah, okay, so let's work with very. There's a lot of very, as you said, Alison. Where's very fit into this?
False.
Yeah. So let's, you could get a person's work, you could write up those categories, almost boxes, and then you could just kind of transfer it and see, you know, where the resources are falling. Yep, so we've got very. How many times have we got very? 1, 2,
Very,
3,
got very
4.
much. Very much. Very.
I think there's 5, isn't it?
5, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Force word they know.
That's right. So there's this limitation on their force resources, isn't it? So that would straight away tell you there is actually, yeah, there are hints at a couple of other areas of force. We'll get to that later, where they kind of need it but they haven't got it. And we'll see what they are. So we've identified this overuse or over-reliance on this one element in force. What else in that first sentence?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Appreciation.
Yeah. Put it in there. You can either mark it in the text or put it under these sort of categories or what? There's some appreciation. Yep. And, all right, let's move on to the second sentence. Second is, I think it's the town is on, isn't it? Okay, so there's a classical grammar error there, but in terms of what we're doing, nothing. It's just what we call assert. It's an assertion. It's not I believe or I feel, or there's no proclamation in there. It's just bold, blank assertion. This town is there. Okay, so that doesn't give us anything. Radio Lake has a very clean water and a fish.
So we see the same.
Yeah, clean. People are zeroing in on clean.
Properly.
Not so much proclaim. It's not like I believe or I think. It's
It
a
seems to
kind
be
of
a
judgment,
social
isn't it?
sanction, perhaps. So the fact that it's
Uh-huh.
clean.
Right.
Yeah, maybe.
What are we judging? Are we judging? That's an interesting one, actually. Are we judging a thing or are we judging behaviour?
I think
And what's the thing?
the water.
Yeah.
Yes. So hang on.
It's not behaviour, it's appreciation.
So I said so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Appreciation. Do you agree? Yeah.
Right.
However, that isn't a very interesting point, Elsa. There's this sort of implication, sort of
Yeah.
indirect, isn't it, that, you know, the authorities are doing a good job, not polluting it.
Yes.
You could, yeah, let's put it here as well, because as I say, things can do a number of jobs. And one term that's used in this framework is a thing called invoked. Invoked means kind of indirect and not obvious. It's like anything that's like a subtext or implied, but it's not explicitly stated. If it's explicit, the opposite, I'll just put the opposite there, is inscribed. So it's like it's actually written and it's there under our nose for us all to see. So this notion of invoked and inscribed is quite important. Because in a text there are often, you know, they're kind of obvious, but there's all these other layers that are working and quite subtly there, and like that one is kind of arguably in there. Arguably in there. Arguably. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't want to do too much of this, you go mad. Okay, do you want to go through this like this, or do you happy to have a go in your group? Yep. All right. So you getting the idea? All right. Get into it. We are going to beach and swimming in this. Work your way through the rest of the text. See what you discover. We'll come back in about 10 minutes. See what you found. Now I'm gonna put the all-seeing eye on you guys.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So behave yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.